Okay, welcome to One Stop Co-op Shop. Steve with oh my gosh, we called Colin Bairnt today.
I live
So-
near Colin, but I'm not exactly that guy.
Hey Baron, thanks for joining me this morning as we
Oh,
talk
Steve,
about.
it's always a pleasure to be here. Love doing it. Let's fire up some co-op chat.
Let's do it. Let's talk about cooperative games. I think this one's gonna be fairly quick, at least for the news section. Hey Varega, thanks for joining us. Yeah, I'm excited for this topic too. This will be a fun one to talk about. Uh, yeah, so let's just jump into it. If you're new here, we do a quick coverage of news and we talk about a discussion topic. And this time we're talking about apps in board games, which I know people seem to get really fired up on. So I'm excited for this discussion. Okay, the news I have is only one game that came into my radar that's coming up really soon, and that is Earth Rising. Now, disclaimer: I don't know exactly. I'm a little confused if this is launching this week or next week on Kickstarter. So it's either going to be the 17th or the 24th. I'm not really sure on which day it is exactly. So, FYI, I might be a week early, but I figure rather do this, give this information to you early than later if I can. So Earth Rising is a 1 to 6 player cooperative game where you are trying to make the world sustainable. It looks pretty cool. I like this whole like approach of sustainability we're seeing in games. We saw it with Earthborn Rangers, and now we're seeing it with this Rising one. So, uh, but yeah, that's yeah. It looks like it demands culture, politics, infrastructure, climate. So we'll see more when it launches.
Sweet.
But yeah, that's all I have. I mean, like I said, really short and sweet because that's the only game I have to mention and talk about this week. But let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this. Let's get into the discussion.
Sweet. This is going
Okay,
to be pretty good. I think we got a lot of people that are going to be on both sides of the fence. This is a usually pretty hotly debated topic.
definitely.
Mm.
So apps and board games. Now there is a I don't know, maybe a recent trend. I was just seeing quite a few apps and board games. I don't say a lot, but basically you've got your analog component, your board game, and then you have your phone or computer or some other digital device to help supplement it. Now I think it might be worthwhile talking about the different ways we've seen it implemented. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think an app and board game necessarily is a randomizer app, for example, or something that helps
Right.
you set up, right? Or rules lookup. Like those are great, but
Those
they're
are also
just
called wikis
wikis.
if you need them.
Yes, wikis. Yes,
Or,
exactly.
or it's also called Board Game Geeks usual forum discussions. That can help me a lot when it comes to like rules or setup issues or things like that. So that yeah, that kind of I mean, sure you're going to get that in some games apps because it needs to be there because the board is a randomly generated system.
Right.
I've usually come across three different ways I've seen apps implemented. One of them is more of a tool to get the story to you. For
Hmm.
example, Foreteller is a huge app that is there only to give you the narrative, which I'm a big fan of because then I don't have to read it.
Hmm.
Which that's not that I don't like reading, and I do support reading. My wife's a teacher. If I didn't say that, I would probably be in a lot of trouble. So support reading. Go read right now. But normally, it's nice to listen to that because that's actually a really good time to be able to set up that board if that isn't part of the app as well. So if it's just that audio part, I mean, that's really there's this game I haven't mentioned in a while. It's called Madara. They have a huge like narrative, so it's really cool to be able to listen to that while I'm setting up the next mission according to the book instead of having to go back and forth and all these different things. So that's one way I've found apps being used. Two, another way to do it is um, making I think you mentioned it, that randomizing thing where you've got games like XCOM. Without that app, that game doesn't exist, and that really is a cool way of implementing an app too because you don't know what's coming. You have to. It's more of a reactive system. I think Mansion of Madness too has that in some aspect as well. It's more of like a reaction to what's going on the board. You're hitting it, something's happening, you're reacting to it. And then the newest form I've found is like Journeys to Middle Earth and Descent, to which kind of react as well, but also creates the game as well. It's like now that the app is now becoming more of the game, which I think
Right.
is where you're seeing some you're that's I think where you're seeing a lot of not necessarily pushback, but just the divide. in whether or not people want to see these apps or not. That's just my personal view on how I've seen apps being implemented and where the divide and where the topic and debate comes from.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, Verga mentioned guided play. He brought that up as a possible description for that, which it helps you through playing the game, right?
Yeah, that'd be like the XCOM type concept.
Yeah,
It guides you to the next. You do all the stuff. It tells you
right,
through the timer, all that stuff, and then boom, now you play. Now you have to react to that. What happened in the app? It guides you to the next part of the game.
definitely.
Or I guess Journeys kind of does that too.
Journey does that. Yep, yep.
Yeah,
Most of them do, to be honest. So,
yeah, I
uh,
guess so.
Successful Geek had a comment. I definitely prefer web-based apps that aren't specific device or one specific to device. For example, Forgotten Waters and Lands of Galzier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Absolutely agree with you on this one because a lot of times, if you make an app, if it's got to run on Android, whatever it has to be, or iPhone, whatever version it is, every year these phones get updated. At some point, it'll be hard to support, right? But if it's a web-based one, guess what makes it easy? And one game that was on Kickstarter, I think it's still going. No, it ended recently. Was Talmor. That was a dungeon crawl with an app, and that was also web based, and that was fantastic because you could send that link to everyone else, and instead of passing around a device, they can log into the same thing, see the same text you're seeing, interact the same way on the device. It was super clean and elegant in that how that worked, and because web based, you could jump to a different device if you wanted, or even go back to that URL later to save your state. It was really well done. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I think Gaia plays another one. I also think like controlling parts of the game as well. Like some of them are real simple. Like I'll mention them because it's probably gonna come up. But like games like the what's it called? I got it over here. Oh yeah, 5 minute games, right? Those are
Oh yeah.
just a timer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or Escape Curse of the Temple, also just a timer game. Like cool,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need it, but it helps with the immersion, right? Especially with Escape. My son gets nervous when he hears those gongs going off and he starts freaking out. It's fun. But yeah, those I don't really consider as much as apps, but I wanted to mention that those are out there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the best way, let's get back to the guided play because I want to talk about it a little bit more. Like, and I think the main issue we hear a lot about when we talk about apps and games is I want to sit down and play a board game. I don't want to sit down and play a video game, right? If I want to sit down and play a video game, guess what? I'm going to sit down and play a video game, right? So I get that, right? And then also the other concern is support for it. Like, what
Yep.
happens? I bought this game, and if I want to play it 5 years from now, does the app still work? If it's required, what do I do in that situation, right? And so those are two, I think, big topics to discuss on this one. And go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're very right. I've got a game right here. Let's see if I can get to it. See if I can make my brain work. There it is. Myth. It had an app.
Uh huh.
It doesn't exist anymore. You
Oh
can't use it.
no.
It wasn't, but again, that was an app that wasn't crucial. It just took part of the game and made it easier to manipulate and use because
Yep.
it was on an app. It's like, okay, we draw a card, we can press this button to make this work, and when we get to a certain part, it reacts for us, it does what we need it to do, and then we can move on. You can do it all yourself. It wasn't a vital component, which is which is good because otherwise that'd be really bad, and you're already talking that way. If
Right.
you don't have the support for that app or the game company dies, are they gonna keep up with the app? Or are they gonna like just kind of eventually pull it from the store? I mean, what if it gets bought up by another company and that
Mm-hmm.
company says no, we're not going to keep supporting that game, we're done with that game? Boom, it just pulls everything. I mean, yeah, that could be devastating. I
Mm-hmm.
actually, my old iPad was the only one that had that app on it, and my iPad is dead. It, it doesn't work anymore. But it was also like one of the first iPads ever. So I mean, I'm really surprised it lasts that long. But you can't. I mean, you got ones like Chronicles of Crime, which is right up
Mm-hmm.
here. There it is. That one again, if you lose it, you lose the game,
Right.
and that's going to be a pretty devastating thing. Though, one thing that apps are doing moving forward that I think is kind of cool is now they're implementing those QR code concepts, and they're giving us replayability into games that normally would not have much replayability in it. I mean, I can play through Madara all the way. It'll be fantastic. If I played through it again, it wouldn't be that different. Maybe down the line, as you're losing missions, you'd be going down a different branch. But I think in the end, you're still, if you're on the success track, you're still going to kind of get that same success story.
Right.
So when you have a game that you can scan things and create different outcomes, that makes the game totally replayable. Sure, you might even play the same characters, but now instead of, like, right now, Colin and I are playing Descent. Oh my gosh, that game is amazing. We love it. We're having a fantastic time with it. And what they're implementing in that game, they have it every time they do these things. Fantasy Flight jumps forward, and it's really cool. Like Journeys to Middle Earth, really great design. Imperial Assault was cool. That was, I think, their little baby, their first attempt at this kind of concept. I know Mansion of Madness 2 was kind of a concept, and so was Descent when they brought the apps. Those were their first things. But of course, those games had already been built. So these Journeys and Descent were kind of built with this app in mind, which really helped a lot. Journeys, they did a great job with. This one they took it a step further with, where now they know who's interacting with what, and it can change the way the story progresses and how that token or character or thing in the environment reacts to that character, which is really cool. So you don't bring the character, you don't get that part of the story, or you don't get to open that door, or you don't get to do something with one of the features, which is a really cool thing. Of course, you're going to miss out, which is kind of sad, but that you're getting a little bit of replay value in that. We haven't really seen much where that you can go down something and something change, and you go down, like going to 3A versus 3B for the next story. I don't think that really is probably going to happen, but maybe it does. We haven't gotten that far. But it's cool that as you're, and was it Drunagor? That one has your QR codes where it could change what's in that next room, and they can make anything they want. There's still the story moment boards, and then behind the doors might get you to a different fight. But we notice that the storyboards are usually going to be the same. I'm rambling a lot now. Steve, what do you think?
No, Brig actually is agreeing with you. He's really impressed with Descent as well. So contextual clues and interaction environment, he loves it. Successful Geek had a question I think would be good to answer. It says, just got my first unlock game. What kind of app would you consider that?
Oh, that's a great question. People would say, "Oh, it's a timer," but no, it's not. There's a lot of things going on in that app.
That one is necessary and integrated into the system itself, right? Like, you have the clue ability. So here's the thing about that one: like, you could potentially have ability to give clues to an analog solution. The problem with that is, if you're not careful, you can come across an answer that you didn't want to see, right? If you're going through pages in a book, right? So that is one way of going about it that does help. But yeah, that is definitely more than a timer in that game.
Yeah, I mean, it has that little button where you have to hit the machine button where, okay, now I got to put it, and it is all codes. It's whether or not you put the code in for most of the stuff. And that works perfectly fine because it's 4-digit code. I mean, the chance of just randomly inputting a button is going to be, well, I'm not a math major, so it's going to be...
I do want to talk about one thing about apps that I think gets forgotten, because a lot of times it brings up like, hey, by the way, 5 years from now, am I going to play this game? Right? It's a valid concern. I think one game, and I'll talk more about it soon, U-Boat, that publisher is like, hey, by the way, if we ever stop supporting this game, here's the code, open source code. The fans can have it, and you can support it, right? So I think more people should do that, honestly. Just like make that promise and follow through with it, because that would help a ton. But the other thing is, I feel like we're kind of negatively focused on the apps too, because like, yes, 5 years from now, whatever it is, 10 years from now, I might play it. But honestly, a year from now, I might get new content without buying anything, right? We've seen it from games like, oh, by the way, you've got these tiles, these characters, like Chronicles of Crime is a perfect example of that, right? They're generic faces and generic stuff. You could create a new, entirely new crime to solve, and just download your app and go play, right? You don't need anything. And that ability to add more content, more replay to your game is fantastic.
Yeah, Journeys has already shown us we can do that.
Yep.
Every expansion comes out usually gets 2 scenarios. The first one comes with the game, and then the second one down the line. Usually you have to buy it, which I can understand. I mean, it takes time and effort to create that, which is another topic we should probably discuss at some point, is the fact that some people are kind of like, but this game's so expensive. Well, there is probably a decent amount of money invested in that app.
Yep.
Instead of it just being like a little timer or something. I mean, it's that's part of the deal. I mean, you're getting like the Journeys. It was it 80, $90 or something for the game? I forget exactly, but really it was just a bunch of tiles, small amounts of cards, and then those miniatures. And everybody's like, really? But I mean,
Hmm.
that I'm guessing that app costs quite a bit too. And Descent was 170. Again, you're getting 3D terrain, two trays of miniatures, and some really small amount of cards, because even some of the things that are kind of cool about the game is some of your upgrades to your weapons and things actually are on the app. You
Hmm.
build it, you put it on your weapon in the app, and the app then when it fires off, it'll say like, "Oh, your weapon triggered because 30% chance." Well, boom, 30% chance that guy's now weakened, and it's like, woo! You can cheer. It's pretty fun, but again, that kind of implementation you have to have in the app, and there's not a component for that, so
That
it's
that's the other thing that's really cool. What Descent is doing is like, hey, by the way, you're getting this bonus. It's gonna be a percentage improvement to something.
mm-hmm.
As a player, you don't have to worry about it. You apply
No,
that, and the app's just gonna do it for you,
I would
right?
get it wrong every time anyway. So it's fantastic that they're doing it for me.
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't know how many times I've rolled a 10 and said, all right, I got an 11. What?
Yeah, it's also interesting too. Like, personally, I'm on the side of I like apps and games. I think there's a happy medium for it for sure. I don't want the app to be the game I'm playing. I want to make sure I'm still
Yeah.
focusing at the table. But for me, an app, it opens up the world for doing things you can't normally do in a board game environment, or even taking away some of the monotony. Like, this is a competitive game. I'll mention it, but Alchemist. That one is you're combining ingredients,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on what ingredients you combine, it creates different potions. If you didn't have app in that game, you would have one person who has the solution, and he's just looking up a grid and say, "Yep, that gives you slow. That gives a health potion," and that's all he's doing. Right? He can't play the game
Yeah.
because he has the answer. So being able to put that in an app form says, guess what, ever the table can play, because honestly, no one wants to be that guy reading up the cards, right?
No. I mean,
Um,
the app also it kind of becomes, in some essence, it kind of becomes your dungeon master in a way as
yes.
well in some games, which I know that we just got done talking about a great AI discussion we had last week, and that was without apps. And now you're seeing, of course, some of the AI now being in apps. And
Hmm.
again, the newest one, Descent, is the best way to talk about it. They have a whole system on how these things move and react to you, and it was kind of cool. My guy went up to fight this guy, so I hit the button and it's like, what weapon are you going to use? I told him what weapon I'm going to use. Okay, before you roll, because you chose that weapon, this guy's going to do 5 damage to you. You got to react to that. I'm like,
That
really?
is awesome.
That's pretty cool,
Yep.
because the weapon I use is a melee weapon, and so the app knew I had to be standing next to the guy,
Uh
which is
huh.
kind of cool. So I think I'm digging how they do that. Now, one other thing that some apps are starting to do is complement the game, which is a cool way to do it. Awaken Realms has now put out the Nemesis app. You don't need it. You can play Nemesis without it, but it adds more to the game because it gives dang, how does exactly this app work? I'm sure somebody in the chat can help me. I haven't actually had a chance to really dig into this app, but I know it's really just a support app. So it kind of does some of the stuff for the game, instead of it being the game. Colin and I did discuss how in Journeys Middle Earth, it almost felt like at times you could pull the board. You could just play the game on the app, which we were kind of sad about. We have found that is not the case in Descent. Some people have said, "Oh, I just started punching things on the map." We didn't, because we had to. We really are getting into the game. We're figuring out. I mean, we need to be moving our characters around. We need to and we're looking at the map on the board way more than we were in Journey's Middle Earth, trying to figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to fight things, where we're going to stand, how far we can go to interact with these objects and things like that. So I'm glad that Fantasy Flight is stepping in that direction. I hope they continue forward in that direction, where the app is still very, very vital to the game, but it's not drawing you away from the game.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think another example of that I absolutely love is U-Boat, right? That game, it is a
Mm-hmm.
giant submarine on the table, and you're managing where your entire crew is in the sub, and the app itself is an open world environment. You can go anywhere, and it's an actual real time game in the sense that like if it would take me 8 hours in a sub to get to that spot, it's gonna take me 8 hours to get to that spot. Now, obviously, you can speed up time in that game, but like this whole environment, this whole open world, where like, hey, there's a ship, and I fire a torpedo or I fire my cans at it. Guess what? That ship is now going to zigzag. or do some other maneuvers to get away from me. And how would you do this in a board game without that app digital element? And I don't think you could, right? And it adds so much to the game. But also in that game, yes, the app is doing stuff. It's more of prompting you, telling you what's going on, and providing audio cues as like depth charges are falling. But you are focused on the ship itself. You're looking at what's in front of you as well. So that is the pinnacle of a board gaming experience with app, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I know Verg had a comment here as well. It says that Descent really cuts down on upkeep and administration to make the game feel way lighter than it actually is, which is also an excellent thing, right? Like ease of entry into a game. You can have a really heavy game with a lot of moving pieces, but if the app's taking care of that, great, right?
Yeah.
Let's distill it down to the fun parts. I completely agree with you. Oh, and Verg has another comment on Descent, which is interesting. He says, the action economy is so important in Descent. I don't know how someone could claim they were just playing an app. I have not played this version of Descent. Do you agree with that, Bairnt? I'm curious.
Yes. There's been a few points where we had to have a big discussion about who's going to go, what we're planning to do, and how we're going to do it. Because even certain boards, though, even the board is attacking you, and you have to figure out how to deal with this. And like, who are we going to keep stuck on what tile, because certain tiles are going to have things happen to you. So yeah, there was a lot of discussion. There's a lot of dealing with action economy. You only get one maneuver and then two actions most of the time. And so do I do this? Do I interact with that? Or do I get this guy off the map? I only have this many actions to do. It's really tough. Or else you hit enemies down to 1 hit point. I'm like, oh, do I waste the action to hit that guy? But I got to kill him. I mean, yes, the action economy is crucial in that game. At least we haven't been, and only mainly because of the fact that some of those boards some of the tiles are actually affecting you, and whether or not you're on it or not makes a big deal. Like, we got to one point where one of our guys was stuck in one tile with a bunch of dudes, and we had to get to this guy, but we knew we had to walk through this other tile that if we stopped on it and it went to the end of turn, the darkness phase was going to hurt somebody on that map. We put them on the map tile because we needed those extra actions in that next tile to be able to take out all those guys.
Sure.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, I'm curious then, you've been talking up the Descent app. Is this maybe your favorite app implementation in a board game that you've experienced so far?
That's a very good question, Steve. So I would say some of my favorite apps are... I'm trying to think of something that's better than this. I don't think there is much, and I think it's because of how well they implemented it, and I hope going forward things continue down this line. I want an app that does what Descent is doing, but still keep that. I think it's the hardest thing as a designer is to separate that app in the game and make the app just kind of still part of it, but not the game. And that's, I think, the hardest part as a designer. I couldn't imagine doing something like that. Like, I'm a huge fan of XCOM. I like the way that game plays. I really enjoy that one. Journey to Middle Earth is fantastic. A lot of other games that I have, like, and of course the unlock games. This game fell real short on me. I did not like Chronicles of Crime. Okay, man. Whoop, there you go. I'd get there eventually. I did not like Chronicles of Crime. I did not like the implementation of just scanning barcodes over and over again and trying to figure out what it did not work for me. There's no immersion. It was totally broken. But then you take, like, the other crime games, I've loved them. So an app can make or break a game sometimes. But yeah, I think where they stand right now, I think Descent is, of course, it's also the hotness. Ask me again in 6 months if that's my favorite app game, and it might still be. I mean, it's either that or Candy Crush. I mean, those are about the only... No, I'm totally kidding. But no, Descent is really good. I can't think of too many other ones off the top of my head. I'm going to look it around. But I don't really have a lot of app-based games, really. I think it's more of a newer thing, I think, coming down the line. So I think you're going to start seeing it. Drew and Gore was really cool, but all it did is it could ramp up or decrease the difficulty, was really all that was doing, because you're scanning the card and just still opening the same... you're just putting another map tile down with certain enemies. It's not... I mean, it's not changing the story. Going down those QR codes is not changing the story yet.
Right. Yeah, that one's a weird one, because it's almost like we're splashing a little bit of app in here, right? I mean, it works. But I actually agree with you. The Chronicles of Crime, I don't know what it was about, but like I felt like I was too focused in on scanning stuff. And I think the other problem is it was one app, right? We're passing this device around and scanning stuff and looking through this one app. And on the flip side, like Talmor is very similar to that. It's
Hmm.
a dungeon crawl, but the difference is it's an app that everyone else can interact with. So everyone has their own copy
Okay.
of that app, and it was such a better experience, like just night and day for me. Like, yeah, you're looking at your phone a lot, but you're looking at the phone in a collective environment. It's kind of like um almost like passing around the rule book, right? Which
No.
would suck, right? Or a narrative story. Let's take turns reading, as opposed to like, hey, everyone gets their own copy of the book. Let's read together, right? That's what it felt like, and that was a
Okay.
huge difference in my opinion. I gotta laugh at Successful Geek here because he's saying Star Realms and soon to be Hero Realms would be the best app games. So, which I play a lot of Star Realms app. I do admit that that's a pretty fun game. Greg has a question. How do you guys think about fan made helper apps? Like the
The
Gloomhaven one he's talking about.
Gloomhaven one, which is obviously the one everybody talks
Hmm.
about. Oh, how many times have I used that Gloomhaven app? Never. I've never used it. I haven't used it. I don't own it. Um, I don't have any problem with helper apps. I don't have any problem with things like that. I mean, for example, it's not a fan made one, but Sword and Sorcery kind of has one where you can get, it basically just stores your guys.
That's a fan
Um,
made one.
is that a fan made one?
Well, there's two of them. I think the one
Oh,
that's like currently supported is the fan made one. Yep.
oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
Yep.
I think that's kind of, I mean, that helps. I mean, I
Hmm.
can, those are huge. I can pack up the whole game. I can be playing multiple campaigns. I don't have to like store every, most of the time when I'm playing my dungeon crawlers, I'll take whatever cards I'm using and stuff and just stick them into this. And then I'll
Mm.
keep it separate from all the rest of the games, the rest of the stuff. So I know what it is. Like for Madara, I have like a spot in my insert where all the stuff I'm using for my characters is stuck. If I
Hmm.
had an app for something like a companion app, I could type all that stuff in,
Hmm.
put the cards back where they're supposed to go, and then play it with like my son, and then come back when I go to record it. I can pull that stuff. I can just pull it because it's on the app, and that's fantastic. I'm a huge fan of that. Does that
Yep.
kind of make sense?
It does. I
I know the Gloomhaven one does more than that. It kind of controls some of the AI components and things like that as
right.
well. And sure, that's totally fine. I have no problem with that. I first off, I'm if you haven't noticed, I have no problem with apps. I actually am a fan of apps. I think they're pretty cool to have in board games, as long as they're not like we've talked about taking me away from the game or
Right.
it becoming the game.
Right.
If they help in any way to make things easier so that I can play more games, super cool. More games, more fun all the time. That's my motto. Well, I guess not really, but it should be
It should be.
one of my mottos, I guess.
Yeah, like I don't really have a lot of experience with the fan made apps, and I'm kind of weird about them. Like the Sword and Sorcery one, I've used a lot, and then at some point I just kind of stopped using it. I just took a picture, right? Because it was
Oh,
just quicker. It's quicker for me to just take a picture. I would put all the components back, and I do the same thing you do, Bairnt, where like I have a separate storage for here's this character, here's this stuff, there's stuff we leveled up, right? So if it's easier to take me just a quick picture, then I don't know, I might do that rather than going in and entering stuff in necessarily. It depends on the game, but I'm kind of washy on that stuff. Um, let's see some other things we have in here. Successful Geek says he honestly think Forgotten Waters is the best implementation of an app in a board game. It's web based, voices the story, keeps track of things you did, everything. I've not played Forgotten Waters, but
oh, my wife and I have played this a lot. Colin let me borrow this game, and we
uh
can't get enough of it. Super good game. It's a lot of
huh.
fun. But we play it differently. We kind of we have Steved the game.
Made it extra
He's getting
hard.
his own verb now. See, we've homebrewed the game a little bit, where we've taken out. I don't know if it actually is a what do you call it? If a fan made concept or if it really is implemented in the game, but we've made it just cooperative. We
Hmm.
just took out the competitive app in it, and it's not really competitive because it's more semi co-op.
Hmm.
But we took out all the cards that are like, oh, hey, play this card to let a person have to re-roll a thing, but you take two of their treasures, stuff like that. We took out all the stuff that does that. So,
Hmm.
but there's still a good stack of cards that are all just for individual characters. And
Cool.
then and so when we play cooperatively, and we have a
Hmm.
really good time with it. But yes, what this app does is it is web based. You click on the scenario you want to play, you put those components out on the board, which is really just a piece. It's a book. You're playing on the book, kind of those concepts, and and you're deciding where you're going to go, and each tile that you're uncovering has a number. You type that number into the app, and then that happens. And then, like you said, it remembers what's happened. So you can find a tile later on, and it'll be like, oh, this happens, but you might find the same guy and be like, oh, I remember ye matey, we from the last time we met. And you're like, oh wow, that's kind of cool. This thing remembers that we talked to this guy later. That's pretty awesome. And then basically it's just a skill check game, but it really does it well. It's a lot of fun. It's hilarious. The stories are super funny. The guys who write them did a really good job. And yes, it's fully narrated, which is another part of the app.
Yeah, it looks like Successful Geek did the same thing you did, made it to full co-op as well. So I'll have to try the full co-op. That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah.
We have another comment from Gaming with Geo. U-Boat is easily my favorite app-driven game. I'm totally there with you. Love that one. I've never used the Gloomhaven Helper app at all. He likes to do bookkeeping himself. So yeah. Yeah, I'm probably aligned with you, gaming. Like I tend to do bookkeeping myself. I sometimes use the helper apps, but yeah, absolutely. U-Boat is so good, so good. And
I'm looking forward to playing that someday next year.
Oh, we need to make that happen. I need to fly out there with it and everything or something, because it's very immersive. Like it's hard to describe the game, but one thing that the game does is it has a microphone usage. So you are on a sub, right? You're supposed to be in a sub, and the goal is to sink other ships, and there might be some escorts, right? If you sink the merchant ships, the escorts come try to find you, and then because it's an app, it's got like you can hear like the death charges or something falling down or whatever. Like boom, 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 getting louder and louder, right? If they know where you are, but if they don't know where you are, it can be really exciting because you could turn on the mic of the device and it'll pick up the audio levels in the room. And so if you speak too loudly or make the loud sound, guess what? They will hear it out in the ocean.
Oh my
and they
gosh,
will find
we'd
you.
be dead. My kid would come through with some whistle or something, and all of a sudden, all the ships would turn around. We'd be dead meat.
That happened to us. We were
like
playing.
that point in the movie where the guy drops the coffee cup, and all the people go.
Yes, exactly.
And the guy's over there going, sorry.
That happened to us. I was playing with my buddy Elijah, and we're at the part where like we're trying to hide from this escort who's circling above us, trying to find us, right? As we're under the water. And I think his wife comes in and is like, hey, what do you guys want for lunch? Like, ah! No, he found us! Oh, so fun. It was so tense. But it was interesting, too, in that game. I played without the microphone, and people still whisper, because you get so into it. Like, it's a great game. Great game. Not for the faint of heart, though. Very heavy. A lot of moving pieces in that one. But yeah, so I'm totally with you. I don't see any other comments here. I know we're about time, so
sure.
But yeah, so I think let's do a quick recap on our thoughts a little bit.
Yeah.
So we both like apps. It sounds like we both want it so that it doesn't detract from the actual game itself, and that's a really tricky thing to do. It's a lot of. I think that's honestly more of a subjective evaluation because I think some people might be a little more engrossed into the app if they give it to them than other people, right? Some people might be okay just looking at quick set aside and keep playing, right? Other people might be like, oh, I'm on my phone, let me look at Facebook and look at this message I got, right? So that's what we're trying to avoid, right?
Right.
But no, I'm with you on that one. And probably Descent is currently your favorite. Could change.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's the newest. It's the newest, the hottest stuff like that. I haven't played U-Boat yet. Otherwise, that probably would be.
Who be up there, hopefully. Maybe not. Maybe hate it.
Maybe hate it. But even the older one, like I'm still a fan of XCOM. I think that's a lot of fun. I like cracking the game out and enjoying it.
Yeah.
Going forward, I just hope that companies that decide to continue using apps. One of the bigger companies doing a lot of app-based stuff is I think Lucky Duck. I think they use a lot of app-based stuff in their games now. That's another one I didn't talk about. Destinies, I think, was the other one. That one was pretty cool. The way they did that one, which was very Seventh Continent card style, where you're moving onto a card, flipping it, and then based on what that card is, things would happen, and you'd have to react to the app. But now, sadly, that's another game where you could probably play almost the entire game without the actual game.
Yeah,
which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
I know because the board is on the app, and you could just move it around, and you can move around and touch things on the app, which is kind of sad. And really, a game is what you want to make it in the end. If you want to make it, oh, hey, I guess I could just do this on the app. that's your own prerogative. I could see where that could happen in a game like Destinies or Journeys Middle Earth or even Descent. I know there's a few people have kind of said, well, I just started clicking things on the app because I knew I could get there. So I just clicked it and then I knew I was standing next to it, which is sad. If that's the way they want to play and that's the way they want to use their app, that's fine. I mean, we all can choose how to have or not. And I think whatever you decide to do with the app is shouldn't really make or break a game for you. It should be there to make the game more enjoyable for you. I know that's what they're designing them for.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. The other thing we want to touch on too, being excited for apps, is the Foretether app. I think it's a fantastic system that they're working on, that whole team, and that one is more of a supplement to the game, but having this audio narration and professionally done, and even cinematic music behind the background is just like fantastic.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
They're by far crushing it. They're going to corner that market. They can't be stopped. Their production value is absolutely amazing. I will always, anytime I get a game, I think they just was it Up Near and Far? Did they just do the audio for Near and Far? I think now.
Think so. I don't really have to double check.
They just put it out.
Yeah.
So imagine that game now with an entire narrated story as you're playing it. I mean, that's their shtick. They're narrating the story, like Steve said. They're a supporter app. You don't need them. You can read the book yourself, which I strongly support you to go out and read a book today. Yes. My wife is standing over there applauding me right now. No, she's not really over there. But she would applaud if she heard this. But it is cool to have those concept and they're doing professionally, which is really good. Foreteller is amazing. I can't say enough good things about them.
I agree,
drink my coffee.
I want to mention them as well. We're talking about apps because they are fantastic, and I think I should have Kanji Studios on here at some point. He's another streamer, also on the One Stop Co-op Discord. If you haven't seen his stuff, go check him out. He does excellent work. He's a big Foreteller fan as well, so that might be a fun topic in the future. I should reach out to him. So get him on here.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we are about time here. This was a fun chat. Thanks, Bairnt, and everyone who joined us on the stream.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on, Steve. As always, next week I know it's going to be a little different. It's not going to be us. Isn't it Peter doing it next week?
Peter's doing it next week, yes. And he's going to have a special guest with him. So I'll share that news with the upcoming schedule. So we'll share that with everyone. But yeah.
I will laugh hysterically if his special guest is like a hand puppet or something, and like he just talks to it over and over again. Which, by the way, I would tune in and watch because I'm sure that would be hilarious.
I think we need to make that happen now. That's the thing. So
the one thing we have to make sure we talk about just real quick before we go is you are listening to two people that are a fan of apps.
Yes.
We're not too negative on them. Yes. So I know for a fact you're kind of getting a little bit of a biased review on apps right now because you're not getting somebody who is strictly an anti-app person or somebody who has a lot of disagreement towards apps. So of course our chats are just chats, and we have a lot of fun just chit-chatting up and hanging out with the crowd inside our stream here. But so just remember there are people out there that aren't fan of apps, and that's totally fine. Just of course, like I said, games are fun. Have fun playing them.
And actually, that's why we kind of do this, right? We wanted to do a live chat because we have our own takes. It might align, it may not align. But if you don't agree with us, come on, tell us. That's the whole point. We're here for the chat. So
we are.
Excellent. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next stop.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.